Aw, yeah. Welcome back to another episode of Drafts with Jordan and Josh. I am one of your hosts, Jordan Blocker. With me, as always, the lovely and talented Mr. Josh Liskowitz. How you doing, Josh?
I haven't been called lovely in a long time, Jordan.
That is such a lie. I call you that every week. All right, we are super excited. NFL
Awkward.
is starting. I know. Are we recording? Hopefully we're not recording. Hopefully they didn't hear me say that.
You mess up every intro, man.
Josh is lovely. Anyways, NFL starting this week. We're super excited about that, and I'm sure Josh probably has some sort of crazy angle for how you could make some, interesting fantasy lineups or something like that. So, Josh, what do you got for us this week?
On this week's edition of Josh Auditions to write for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, drafts, this is the week, man. NFL starting this week. Got to download that app if you already haven't. All you have to do is do a search for draft on your phone, and you'll find it. Interesting thing about this week, though, as far as my angle, you've got one game that's not going to happen because of that hurricane. And obviously, we hope everything turns out as okay as it possibly can. But Miami and Tampa Bay, two offenses that have a lot of interesting players, they're not going to be playing this week. But the interesting fantasy slant with that is because you have your best ball format, and just in general, those guys aren't going to have their bye in week 11. That's when they're going to be facing. So that's going to benefit you later in the year when teams are struggling on their bye. You're not going to have to worry about that because you're going to have all your full rosters this week. So make sure when you sign up for a team on draft in that best ball format, and you set that roster, all you're doing is making sure you load up on guys like Devontae Parker. Who else we got in Tampa? Maybe Jameis Winston. Boy, he's a guy that can put up a ton of points in week 11, don't you think?
Sure.
Go ahead and stock up on those guys. Jordan knows all about fantasy sports. He wants to tell you all about it.
I can tell you about Dirk Cutter's offense. I would say in the red zone, you should go Mike Evans, and then the ball will next go probably to I would say tight end normally, but you got Brate and Howard there now, so I don't know how you split it up, Josh.
But see, that's the great thing about best ball format of draft is if you get both, then you're getting a hit because it doesn't matter. You get your highest scoring guys for the year. So if you stock up on both those guys, you stock up on Jameis, you're going to be in good shape all year, man.
Nice. All right. We are going to we're going to kind of change up the order a little bit here, Josh. We only have one Inside the War Room left. That we're going to do. So we're just going to go ahead and do it now. I know. But, I got to tell you, before this, I was sort of scanning, the football message boards of the dark web. And people had noticed that we didn't do an Inside the War Room for the Bills and for the Redskins and for the Panthers. And there's all these sorts of conspiracy theories that you hate the Bills and Redskins and Panthers. Yeah. And so I had to post anonymously that you didn't. It's a long story. But anyways, Josh, the reason why we didn't do those three teams is because their general managers had sort of been removed. And, the reason that we were doing these Inside the War Rooms is so we could sort of share with you guys what went behind the picks and the mentality that went behind the picks. And since these people are no longer there, we just didn't really see the necessity of it. So, again, that leaves us with but I tell you, John Dorsey snuck in there because, we did Inside the War Room and then Dorsey was let go. So, Chiefs fans, you lucked out.
That week back.
No, we will not take it back because we got to talk about Patrick Mahomes.
I regret everything.
So anyways, this is our last Inside the War Room. This is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Josh, things are really different there now and sort of being done differently than some other places. They got Tom Coughlin now there as the executive vice president of football operations. And he came in there, Josh. They have a sort of weird power triumvirate. I don't know why you call it, Josh. I mean, what do you call it when it's just the power sort of shared three ways? Is that a trinity? Is it a trilogy? What is it?
I could go with Trinity. I think that makes sense. But let's be honest. I think it's very clear, especially when you look at what they've done in the past compared to what they try to accomplish in this draft. This draft has Coughlin's footprint all over it.
Oh, yeah. I would say, because I was sitting there making little triangle shapes with my fingers to do the Trinity or Trilogy or whatever it is. But yes, the Coughlin would be at the top of the finger pyramid. And then,
Yes.
below that on the opposite side, on the sides would be Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell. But they're, like you said,
Is it
Josh,
equilateral or an isosceles triangle? That's the next question.
these, the triangles, I don't really know that well. So we'll have to move on. So the power triangle of those three is there now. Like you said, Josh, it seems like it's Coughlin, like the sort of message seems like it's coming from Coughlin down about what they want to be doing with the ball and the type of team they want to be. And, Josh, you said they really wanted to come in and be a physical, tough team.
That's nice. No, I don't mean to be facetious with that, but
I know.
Man, you look at the moves, the first couple picks they made, and certainly that's, I guess, leaning toward that direction, but that just doesn't really seem to fit, A, the rest of the personnel on this roster, certainly the offense, and B, I don't know that those are the right guys for this. I mean, you look at Leonard Fournette, him being this power back, well, I think he was a guy that once he got going, once he was in space, he was just a monster. He's an absolute bear to bring down. But I didn't see him creating a lot at the line of scrimmage, getting through tight spaces consistently, exploding through the line, being able to find cutback lanes, do all that stuff. I don't know. I didn't see a lot of that at the line, and I just think he's going to have a lot of muddiness to kind of try and trek through with that offensive line. I know they took Cam Robinson with that second pick, but there's a lot of up and down with him, and we saw a lot of up and down with him in preseason as well, both good and bad. But I just think it's going to be tough sledding for Leonard Fournette, and I don't know if he's the right kind of back to get through that. I think he needs a system and a place with a lot of personnel that are really well established, and that's just not the case on that line.
I mean, he definitely fits the mold of being physical, and I guess, he does accomplish that aspect of it. They wanted to improve their run game and their physicality. So, again, I guess they did that, but, again, the league and the sport in general are trending away from that. So, interesting, I guess, strategy.
Yeah, and the other issue with that, too, if you have a big physical back, if that's the brand you want to play, he better be durable as well. Right. And I'm not saying he's injury prone, but, he really struggled and didn't have nearly as good of a 2016 campaign at LSU as he had in 2015 because he had banged up. He had some nicks and things going on throughout the season that always just seemed to hold him back. And quite frankly, the NFL, that doesn't cut it. You've got to be able to play through that. And so we'll see if Fournette can step it up. But again, when you're a back taking that kind of pounding, you're going to have to be able to play hurt because you're going to be hurt.
Yeah, they view him as a 4-minute back, and I got to tell you, Josh, in my own personal philosophy, I said there's no more dangerous weapon in all of football than the 4-minute offense. But the thing is that it requires you to have a lead first. So
it does.
Glad they got their 4-minute back, but I don't know what they're going to do to get a 56.
Minor details.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So again, it's just sort of I don't know, an interesting way that they went about this, sort of going running back first. It just, again, stuck out to me as interesting. But again, about Fournette, Josh, they mentioned, his 2015. They mentioned, he's basically been really productive in the SEC. And, again, he was one of the players. They had 4 players basically on their board for that pick. And he was one of them. I think it was Garrett, Thomas, Fournette, and Adams. And Trubisky was not. So they basically, if Fournette wasn't there, I think they probably would have gone with Adams. But anyways, So they flat out said, Josh, that they were going to go into this to try to get a running back first and then their offensive line second and then either a pass rusher or a corner third. Isn't that just weird to you?
That is really bizarre. And I guess with this draft class, that kind of could have panned out. But especially you're picking top 5, I guess there were backs even besides Leonard Fournette that may have been worthy of that pick. You and I probably definitely would have preferred McCaffrey be considered with that pick instead. But still, That's just a weird thing to say. Yeah, we're going to draft a running back top 5. Then, yep, we're going to go tackle. I just don't understand why you would predetermine your draft order like that. You really need to target specific guys that fit what you do, that that they're going to work in your system and then let the board play itself out through that way. I just don't understand that methodology.
Yeah, it seemed like it really almost like trying to force the board type thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really, really interesting. It really stood out to me as being, again, something that's odd. And not to say who knows, maybe this will end up, working really well for them. But again, just sort of the way that they handled it just seems sort of strange to me. They took Cam Robinson with that second pick, Josh. Again, they view him as an eventual starter at left tackle, but again, someone who sort of added to that physicality that they wanted to do, this physical run game aspect of it. What else do you think they liked about Robinson?
Yep. Take the on-field production aside. You look at 35-inch arms, 320 pounds, 6'6". He's got that whole Planet Theory thing going for him. He's young. He played as a true freshman, left after 3 years. That certainly plays into it. They think that he can develop both mentally and physically beyond where he's at right now. Durability to hold up the last 3 seasons at Alabama. There's no question about that. That's certainly a big thing. And we have seen in the past, Alabama guys have been kind of ground up at Alabama and then have some problems in the NFL. So hopefully that's not the case for Cam Robinson. Hopefully he can continue to show the durability he showed while at Alabama.
Yeah, it was a guy that, we always interested in how these teams do these different things. Caldwell, Coughlin, and Marone, the power triangle, they all went down to Alabama to work him out. So thought that was interesting to note.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then the next pick they took, they fulfilled their pre-draft destiny, and took an edge rusher, pressure player, Dwayne Smoot. They sort of view him right now as being a guy who can sort of rotate in, but they mentioned his production, Josh, and that he was active.
Yeah, Smoot. Let's go back a little bit. Entering last season, so about this time last year, Smoot was right at the top of our list of edge guys because he was outstanding in 2015. One of the things he didn't do consistently well in 2015 was finish. Well, not only did he not do that last year, but there were times where he just did not seem to have too big of an interest to play in the run. So with that being said, I think where they took him was about proper value for him because there's definitely a lot of upside, a lot of potential in terms of his explosiveness, his agility. He has good size for the position, really a natural size for a defensive end. 38.5 tackles for loss, 15.5 sacks in his career. Those were things that they cited and Jacksonville as reasons they wanted him there. And certainly they need to be more consistent in terms of getting a pass rush off the edge. So while I had some issues with how Smoot finished out his career at Illinois, I still think at that point that was a good place for him to go.
Next player they took was PFF favorite D.D. Westbrook. Again, a player who sort of, I think, fell in the draft a little bit due to some off-the-field concerns, Josh. But they said that he was basically just sticking out on the board so much in the 4th round, even though it wasn't a position need, they had to take him. Yeah,
well, we're going to talk about him again a little bit later, but he's been sticking out on the preseason field as well. He's really been outstanding for them already. They didn't view it as a position of need, which obviously they shouldn't have. But, again, that value was just too good to pass up. So this is kind of the pick that goes counter to what they talked about with their board. And this is the kind of thing I think you need to be doing more often as a franchise as opposed to predetermining what positions you're going to take in what slots. You got to let the board play out. And when you have a guy like D.D. Westbrook that you've done background on, that you trust you've got good information on, and he's falling to you at a good spot like that, you got to jump on him because, man, I think he has potential to be a big-time player for them if he can keep all the off-field stuff under wraps.
Yeah, and he really brings an element to their offense of, being able to stretch opposing defenses vertically, which I think will open up some of the other stuff, hopefully open up some areas for Fournette to run. The next player they took, Josh, was a guy we liked because Blair Brown, a linebacker from Ohio. We really liked that whole linebacker core there. But anyways, they view him as a core special teamer and then a guy who can probably play more than one position.
Yeah, I think he's been a little bit slow so far through camp and preseason to catch on, but still, I really like his upside. I just feel like he's such an instinctual guy on film doesn't have the best measurables, but I think they're good enough for a linebacker. And again, you say core special teamer. He's going to be a really consistent tackler, really consistently competitive and physical guy. That's what you want on special teams too. So that's where you start him off initially. They cited the fact that he can play Will and Mike, and I think that's true. So you have some versatility with him as well. And they liked him when they met him at the NFLPA game as well. So not the Senior Bowl, but that all-star process, that was big for them when they met him. And I like Blair Brown going forward. Don't know how much you're going to get out of him this year, but long-term, I think that's going to turn out to be a really solid pick for Jacksonville.
I got to tell you, I'm seeing a serious trend here now that I'm looking at these picks. So, like, after they went their free draft destiny of running back, O-line, and then either a pressure or corner player. Like you said, they went with D.D. Westbrook in the fourth round. They sort of veered off of that, but then they went Blair Brown, and then every pick from Westbrook on to me is a special teams pick. Now that I think about it, obviously D.D.'s going to fit a role in the offense, but man, he's got great return ability too. And then Blair Brown, and the next pick they took, Josh, was another Big Ten kid, Jalen Myrick.
Yeah, and again, you talked about D.D. Westbrook's return ability. Myrick certainly shows that as well. So right off the bat, you think you got a gunner and a vice on the punt teams. You got a returner on the return teams. Explosive guy. They think he can probably play outside, but he's got that speed and explosiveness you want on the inside at nickel. That's probably where they really want him, and considering the personnel they already have, that's where he fits. I think this is a really, really smart pick for them. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, they really viewed him as that nickel role. But as you mentioned, gunner, vice, core special teamer right off the bat. But yeah, that 4.28 speed. But yeah, they said that he was basically, he lacks height. He's only like 5'9". So yeah, they said he'd probably inside. I think you're right, Josh. The last player they took was again another special teamer. That's Marquise Williams, a fullback. They call him a bowling ball. But again, Josh, I think he's there to basically just run over people on special teams.
I think that's fair. Well, let's be honest, though. If they're going to convert to more of a power team, aren't they going to need to be using a fullback with Fournette?
Yeah, I imagine they're going to have to at some point, right?
So that right there would imply that they're going to get some production out of him there as well. But yeah, obviously on special teams, a guy like that.
Value, yeah.
Yeah.
So that does represent a good value pick now that you mentioned it like that. Yeah. Yep. So, all right, Josh, and then forecasting them forward, like I said, they're in this sort of philosophical shift in their front office. Even though Dave Caldwell has remained there in place, again, with Coughlin coming in, things have definitely changed. Looks like they're going to try to focus on big bodies on the line of scrimmage, and adding, sort of physicality. Coughlin had mentioned that he wasn't in charge of personnel in New York, but he was the time before he was in Jacksonville. So we can't necessarily look to the personnel decisions during Coughlin's period with the Giants for trends at all. So he's going to be an interesting one to watch, Josh, to see what is going on in Tom Coughlin's mind right now.
Yeah, this is such an interesting team to me because obviously, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they have a lot of issues still. They have a quarterback situation that's in complete flux. Bortles was kind of given the starting QB job, even though they really didn't want to. So it looks like they're ready to move on from him. If he can't perform, they really don't have anything else behind him. I just don't see Chad Henne as a viable option. Obviously, they don't if they want to move on from Bortles and couldn't even take him out of the starting lineup. And you talked about the run game and our questions with that and the offensive line. But then you look at the other side of the ball, and I think they've done a tremendous job of drafting. And part of that is, you look at them drafting guys like Blair Brown, Jalen Myrick with special teams in mind. They're able to do that because they've accumulated a lot of talent on that side of the ball. So I kind of have a feeling this is going to be one of those years where it's a little bit frustrating because I could see that defense really taking a big step forward and being held back a little bit by that offense.
That'll be interesting to watch. All right, Josh, let's get to the rookie review. We love this part because, like I said, we love the rookies. I always love checking out the rookies, how they're doing. And I got to tell you, Josh, man, the most exciting player to watch so far this preseason as far as rookies go has been our QB1, Patrick Mahomes.
Can I show you my shocked face? It wouldn't do us much good because we're on a podcast.
You do have a face for podcasts, though.
I do.
We are not shocked, but man, he's just made he's made throws where he's already made throws I've never seen other people really make.
Yeah.
And it's been in the preseason.
Yeah. It's such a tough thing with the arm strength because there are guys, and there's one in particular when we review quarterback play from this past weekend in college that I want to talk about. But arm strength isn't the be-all, end-all in the NFL anymore. And that much is very, very clear, and it's been repeated over and over. However, when you do have a guy with a big arm, as long as he's accurate with it, can do all the other things you have to do first, when he does have the big arm, you can accomplish so much more as an offense. There's so much more that you can do that other quarterbacks, they just can't even pretend to do. That there's things that you can install within the offense that an Alex Smith, per se, is never even going to dream of attempting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing, too, is, I totally agree. The other thing, too, is that, Patrick, things occur to him in his brain on the field that just don't occur to me or to, other normal humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just, I don't know, he can do, this math in his head, and he knows he can make some otherworldly throw and have it land right in the receiver's hands, right on the edge of out of bounds. It's just, it's mind-boggling at times.
It's very Cutler Stafford-esque. And obviously, I think with him, you're going to end up getting some of the bad stuff that you see with Cutler and Stafford, just because they're going to be willing to take those gambles and they're going to miss on them at times. But again, you're accomplishing things that others simply can't even pretend to consider trying. And that makes it so much tougher on a defense when you have to defend every square inch of the field, every single play.
Yeah, and on the field in this past week, he completed 9 of his 14 aimed passes, passer rating of 131.5. You said there is always some bad sometimes with him, but man, he's much watched TV, Josh. Must see TV. I'll definitely be watching any game that he plays in, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later. All right, the next player we're going to talk about is Marlon Humphrey, the longish corner from Alabama for Baltimore. You got a lot of snaps this past week.
He did, which is probably a sign that they're not going to play him, but he's certainly not a starter at this point. Hopefully he gets in nickel dime situations. We see him a little bit, but it's good to see him play well down the stretch as well. And we'll see what we get out of him. It's tough for rookie corners to really get a lot of production once the actual regular season starts up, but good things so far from Marlon Humphrey as well.
Yeah, he was targeted 8 times, he only allowed 2 catches for 14 yards, and also broke up a pass on his 76 snaps. So that was a good performance from Humphrey there. All right, Josh, the second round player who really stood out was Taylor Moton, the guard from Carolina. He played 65 snaps and was pretty solid throughout the game, wasn't he?
Yeah, and really that's been the case throughout the preseason. He actually made the all-preseason team. So standout performances throughout the month of August. 99 total pass blocks, yielded no sacks, just 3 total pressures. It's interesting, too, because he did play a little bit at guard, 21 snaps at left guard, at least to start in week 1. Spent the rest of the time at right tackle, and certainly I would think, considering the 2 guards Carolina has, they really want Moton to take over that right tackle position. He's also graded well on run blocks this preseason, grade of 76.3. That's not great, but I think it's good enough, and especially when you consider the type of offense, the type of rushing offense that Carolina wants to run with that power, it's really more dependent on those guards being able to pull, get out in space, and defeat blockers there. So I think more of the onus is on them, and I think Moton will be just fine at right tackle.
All right, the third round rookie who stood out last week was Tim Williams, the edge rusher for the Ravens from Alabama. Josh, he posted a 88.2 pass rushing grade. Can you break out your shocked face again? There it is, everybody. Josh in a shocked face. Yeah, we know this. That's what this guy is here to do, right? Josh, rush the passer.
He is, and it's one of those perfect situations we talked about when we went over the Ravens reviewing their draft process, how they can just play him situationally, which is what he's used to at Alabama, but just put him on the pass rush. Hopefully, you get guys like Suggs there. He can learn how to better defend against the run, but you just play him situationally for now, and he can produce in that aspect. And you already went over the numbers. Big week for him.
Yep. The fourth round rookie who really stood out, PFF favorite, and again, a consistent performer thus far throughout the preseason, and that is wide receiver D.D. Westbrook from the Jaguars. Played 43 snaps. Josh, he had an 84.0 overall grade.
Yeah, and 85.6 for the preseason. That makes him the top graded receiver for the entire preseason. So he, again, another rookie that made that all preseason team. And, this is something we talked about. It's an interesting situation in Jacksonville. Obviously, they have issues at quarterback, but they have a lot of really good young wide receiver talent. It looks like Marquise Lee is starting to come around healthy. So it'll be interesting to see where D.D. Westbrook fits in. But considering Jaguars QBs this preseason had a rating of 157.1 when throwing to him, I have a feeling he's going to see his share of balls this season.
Yeah, and I think that, we'll go into it later on in the show when we talk about going inside the Jaguars war room. They really got him there to really stretch defenses vertically. So he's already proven that he can do that. So yeah, I'm really excited to watch what Westbrook does this year. All right, the sixth round, we have two guys that really stood out last week, Josh, we want to talk about. The first one is linebacker Jordan Evans for the Bengals, the 94.9 overall. Wow, but he was only on 18 snaps, but still, pretty solid performance out there on the field. Yeah,
excellent from him. Again, it wasn't just this week. He's been like that throughout this preseason. Run stop percentage of 20%. So that basically means 1 out of every 5 run attempts that the defense has had when he's been on the field, he's been making a stop. So excellent from him there. 8 run stops total. And he's also played very well in coverage as well, which obviously that's paramount for linebackers in today's game. So showing a little bit on both ends, and a team that really should have spot open for him to be able to see significant playing time, because let's be honest, as much as they've rolled some household names through that linebacking core, they haven't played that well the last couple of years. So hopefully we get to see more of Jordan Evans during the regular season as well, because I think he's earned it.
And he has an excellent first name. The other sixth-round prospect,
debatable.
The other sixth-round prospect who's really stood out last weekend, actually throughout the preseason, as you know, Josh, is Elijah Qualls from Washington, now with the Philadelphia Eagles. He had an 84.0 overall grade on 46 snaps this past week. But Josh, like I said, you put together the all preseason team. He's been solid. He's been solid all year already.
Yeah, he really has. I got to see his first performance of the preseason. He was excellent there. And overall, he has 2 sacks, 9 total pressures. He's even better against the run, had 5 stops this preseason, and, of course, limited snaps. Just his ability to play all around, I think that's obviously going to help him going forward. That's a pretty loaded line, even on the interior, but I think we're going to see quite a bit of him, and he's going to be a factor just because of how good everyone else is around him. I think you're going to continue to see him play very well.
All right, as we sign off on our last preseason rookie review, Josh, this is we didn't prep this, we didn't even discuss this at all. I'm just throwing you under the bus right now, Josh. I want your O-Roy and D-Roy predictions. I'll give you mine first to give you exactly 10 seconds to think about this. My offensive rookie of the year prediction is Christian McCaffrey. I believe he's just such a versatile, incredible mismatch weapon that perfectly fits where the league is going. And then my defensive rookie of the year prediction will be, there's a lot of times those go to you guys who play the inside linebacker position. So I think that Hassan Reddick, his combination of speed and the fact that he'll probably be used to like A-gap blitz, I think he'll be able to sort of pad his stats, Josh. So I'm going with Hassan Reddick of the Cardinals as my defensive rookie of the year candidate. And who is yours?
It's tough for me not to agree with you on Christian McCaffrey, but I'm going to go a different direction. I think Kareem Hunt in Kansas City, now that he is the guy, Sharkhandra Rest is fine. Maybe he'll end up taking some of those third down snaps just because of his ability in pass pro, but pass pro isn't going to win rookie of the year. And I think Kansas City is going to be using him a lot just because of the way that offense is structured. You're going to see a lot of different things with him, whether it be receiving, whether it be that multi-dimensional rushing game. I think he's going to get a lot of volume. and that's what's going to carry him to Offensive Rookie of the Year. And on the other side of the ball, I think the Detroit Lions are going to be on the field quite a bit, that defense. And they're structured such to where they're kind of a bend but don't break. So what that means to me is there's going to be a lot of tackles to be had for Jared Davis, who's a day one starter. I really don't think he's going to be in the top 2 or 3 of actual, from PFS perspective, inside linebackers. But I think he's going to rack up so many tackles that the NFL media is going to look at him and say, yep, that's your Defensive Rookie of the Year.
All right, there you have it. I'm going with McCaffrey and Reddick, and Josh is going with Hunt and Davis. All right, Josh, it has been dubbed the year of the quarterback. And so, this is it. We feel the responsibility to sort of keep our wonderful listeners updated on the state of the year of the quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't remember that, honestly, like all the times that I ate Chinese food, and I would see that do the menu, and I would do the years. It was like the year of the rat and the year of the dog, but I don't recall the year of the quarterback being part of that. But this is
I don't think it was either.
This is the year of the quarterback. Now I'm hungry for Chinese food. All right, Josh, we basically going to start off with talking about probably the most discussed quarterback performance of the week, and that was Josh Rosen's comeback against Texas A&M, where I guess if we listen to Gus Johnson, Josh Rosen has just solved all the world's issues with one throw. But kind of tell us, Josh, what was the reality? What actually happened with Rosen against A&M?
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit more measured as to what actually happened. Now, I'll preempt this by saying, listeners, if you remember back to the very first podcast you and I did, Rosen was our guy. He was our number 2 overall quarterback.
We were very high on Rosen.
So we're very high on Rosen. So with that being said, he made a couple of really, really questionable throws there that not only did he get away with, but they ended up being touchdowns. First off, the one down the field over the middle, he completely underthrew, and the safety completely misplayed it. And it fell into the arms of his guy for a key fourth quarter touchdown.
That was terrible.
That's a turnover-worthy throw. That should have been an interception.
Yeah.
So when we grade, we're not grading that as a touchdown because he didn't deserve a touchdown. He deserved an interception. So you got that one there. And then you have the other ridiculous one where he's scrambling left and just flutters one into a pile in the end zone. His receiver comes forward.
Is that his YOLO ball?
I guess
that was
so.
The YOLO ball, yeah.
The YOLO ball, yeah.
Sorry.
Also not good.
Yeah, sorry for our listeners if you haven't heard that term yet. It's a Josh Liskowitz term for guys who just sort of throw the YOLO ball into the end zone. I only live once. Let me just throw it over here and hope my guy catches it. And that was definitely a YOLO ball from Rosen.
Yeah, the Rex Grossman special. That's the other affectionate term we can call that. But I mean, he got away with both of them. So that doesn't mean, though, from a quarterback evaluation stance that we can't be critical of it. Now, did he do a lot of good things? Yeah. I mean, you look at his QB rating on intermediate throws, 141.1, outstanding. On deep throws, obviously it's affected by that one play, which should hurt him significantly, but it's still 121.5. So very good in that respect. But it's hard to look at what he did as a whole, and obviously he had some struggles in the first half. But it's, you look at everything else he did, I'm just not completely sold on that performance, on that being a true signature performance in the eyes of the NFL, because it took a lot of luck to get to where they did.
Right. I think that no one's really going to doubt I guess, how he was able to sort of, keep fighting and bring the competitive spirit, I guess, of Rosen. But yeah, some of those throws, the game should have been over. And his grade was over 77.6 overall grade. So he didn't, again, it wasn't that great, of a game and shouldn't be considered as much. But again, he's also, historically that he's been sort of plagued by drops and things like that too. But, again, it's something we'll definitely be monitoring going forward and letting you guys know about it. Going over to his crosstown rival, Sam Darnold, he posted slightly better numbers than Rosen, as far as overall grade goes, Josh, he was 80.3, but I mean, he didn't really look that crisp in this game, and it's against Western Michigan, and you and I are high on their corner Darius Phillips, think he's an NFL prospect, but again, like, it's not like they're playing, Washington or from last year's secondary or Colorado from last year's secondary. It wasn't necessarily like an elite secondary, and he didn't really necessarily have the best game.
Yeah, you look at the numbers on what he did just before we talk about what he looked like physically. Passer rating versus pressure, 27.1. That is something that needs to be improving this year. That is something we look at big time as far as is he progressing.
And he was really good at last year, right?
Yeah. Obviously it's week one, and one of the things we talked about this offseason with him being a timing and rhythm passer, that maybe it's going to take a little bit for him to get going. We said the same about Luke Falk, but so we'll see if that picks up. It better pick up quickly because he's facing a good team with some good corners this week.
Oh, man.
But you look at his passer rating, intermediate, 45.0, deep passes, 23.4. So basically everything he did was short and underneath, which is fine. But the reality is at the NFL level, those are all expected passes, every single one, every single time. You're supposed to be able to hit the short and underneath throws. So that's not very impressive. 0 big-time throws. You expect more from a player of his caliber against a team like Western Michigan that really shouldn't have been that game against them.
Yeah, because, I mean, as you mentioned, look at the secondary he's going up against, this week with Stanford with Quentin Meeks and Elijah Holder and Justin Reed. I mean, they're just so talented. So that's going to be really interesting to see how Darnold plays this week against them. Yeah, really interested to see that one. All right, let's leave my beloved Pac-12 and go all the way out to Louisville, where Lamar Jackson continues to just, put together
perfect pronunciation, by the way.
Awesome performance.
Louisville.
I've worked on that for years. 85.4 overall grade for Lamar Jackson. Again, a nice way to start the season off for him. Just kind of continuing on with his stellar performances from last season. Again, we hit on him at the beginning of the season. There are things that we'd like to see this year, but and I'm sure there was some ups and downs in this game. Josh, you saw it more than I did, but again, pretty good performance from Jackson coming out of the gate.
Yep, this was a game I got my mitts on quite a bit, so I got the full game on him, and I have to say as an analyst, he is a maddening player to try and evaluate. Obviously, everyone knows we calculate the time to throw, time to pressure, things like that. That's part of what we do. Well, think about the way he plays. He's so jittery. He stops, he starts, he throws half a pump fake. He scrambles out all of a sudden, then he'll stop. He looks like he's going to throw, and he pulls it down. That's so imagine trying to evaluate that. You're constantly restarting your process when looking at him. But there were certainly some things to like. He had an early candidate for throw of the year, which actually ended up being an incomplete pass that never went to review. Later in the game, he's scrambling down the right sideline and just heaves one on a fade route. Just hits his man perfectly just as he's coming out of bounds, and the rest ruled him out of bounds, and he was covered. So it was beating coverage. He had a ton of zip on him, but the rest ruled it out of bounds, and because of the game situation, Louisville didn't really put up much of a fight and just ran the next play. I think looking at what replay angles they had a legit question as to whether that was actually complete or not, whether the receiver got his feet down, But anyway, so he shows you the ability to make throws like that. And then you see him against pressure, against perceived pressure, and there are some real issues there. Didn't see him working through progressions. Whenever the defense was able to kind of funnel him in and keep him from being able to scramble out, he really struggled to figure out what to do next. He still seems to be in that mode of, I am going to pass to my first target, and if he's really not there, I'm either forcing it or I'm going to try and run. And he needs to be able to develop mentally beyond that. Good numbers first week, but I still think we need to see a lot more progression from him as we move on throughout the season.
All right. The next quarterback we want to talk about is Josh Allen from Wyoming, the other physical freak in addition to Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
Allen, the the big kid from Wyoming, but again, he was not necessarily a very accurate passer last year. Did push the ball down the field a lot, though. There are a lot of yards in the air compared to, he's not just really dinking and dumping. But again, he's a group of 5 guy, Josh, so he only has so many, big Power 5 conference games, and this was one of them coming out of the gate against Iowa, and Allen kind of fell flat in this one.
Yeah, he really did. And especially in the fourth quarter, he fell apart with a couple of bad interceptions. 11.1% of his throws were turnover worthy, we deemed. One out of every 9 passes was a potential turnover. That's awful. That is not good, especially on a quarterback like him, who's going to be throwing close to, if not more than 40 passes a game. So you're looking at the potential of 4+ turnovers a game from him. That can't happen. I know it's Iowa and they're a little bit better, but I don't think he did much to elevate his stock or his team for that matter. Passer rating versus pressure, 1.7. Just not good. Versus the blitz, 0.0. He's still just seems to be behind mentally in terms of being able to process, okay, the blitz is here. That means I have an open target here. I have a lane here. He hasn't figured that part out yet. He's got a season to do it, but for a guy that's getting a ton of pub as a potential number 1 overall pick, I just don't see him being anywhere close to that capability in terms of his mental game right now.
Yeah, that's again, that sort of talk is a lot of projection. Like I said, we've and the PFF analysts kind of, I think, started his hype last year, especially because we saw the big time throws and the athleticism. But again, I don't think you've ever heard us say number 1 pick without Allen.
No, yeah. And it's one of those things too. Especially with small school guys that are underclassmen. You start off, you're looking at traits. And you see the big traits and you get excited because you kind of naturally expect a progression. You expect him to get better in certain traits. Well, we didn't necessarily see that throughout last season. And at least through one game, he looked like the same guy we saw last year. So, again, needs to improve. He's got plenty of time to do so, but he's got some work to do.
All right, let's move on to some other college players who, prospects who had strong weeks. And actually, we got a lot of corners that had strong weeks that we're going to talk about, but actually just a couple players in general. But anyways, the first one I want to talk about, Josh, was Southern Methodist University corner Jordan Wyatt. Outstanding first name on this prospect.
Terrible first name. Yeah.
He is.
No wonder why you want to talk about him.
He's, we saw him, I think, leading up to the season too, when doing some film review. I thought he was sort of a speedy cover type guy. But again, it's only the first week of the season here, and he's playing against Stephen F. Austin, Josh. But I thought he had a pretty good performance.
Yeah, 4 passes into his coverage. Gave up 3 catches, but it was only 18 yards. Only 3 of those yards after the catch, so very solid tackling performance. Opposing quarterback was just 43.8 was his quarterback rating when throwing into his coverage, which is barely above an incomplete pass. So really strong debut from him. Is Stephen F. Austin. He's going to have tougher opponents going forward, but strong debut.
They're the Lumberjacks. I found that out. I did not know that, by the way. Stephen F. Austin, Lumberjacks. The next player I want to talk about is the wide receiver from USC, Deontay Burnett. And hey, Josh, who was our breakout wide receiver candidate?
I think it was this guy from USC named Deontay Burnett. Oh, it's him.
Okay.
It's him.
Wow. All right. Okay. It's the same guy. Okay. So anyways, yeah, it looks like he, again, had a pretty good game as we expected. Josh, looks like he's still Darnold's go-to guy. Going to see a lot of time in the slot, but he can win inside and out. And he actually had a decent game against Western Michigan.
Yeah, team high 7 of 8 targets. That was something we talked about throughout the offseason, is that he's going to be the guy to get those targets. 142 yards, again, against Western Michigan's secondary that has some players. 75 of those yards came after the catch. I think, too, going forward to this week, that's going to be a real interesting matchup. Assuming Meek stays outside, I think he's going to be the heavy volume guy. I'm interested to see how he does this week, but I have to imagine if Meeks is staying off of him, they're going to keep trying to feed him the ball because he's their most natural weapon.
The next player who had a pretty good week was Pac-12 player again, and one of our PFF favorites. I know it's one of yours and my personal favorites, and it's Hercules.
It's a much better first name.
Hercules Mata'afa from Washington State. Josh, we love this guy, but we still have no idea where to play him. He's a 250-pound defensive tackle, and all he does is win as a pass rusher.
Well, the nice thing about today's NFL, too, though, is I think they're starting to be okay with that. You don't necessarily have to have a set role for a guy. If he does a specific skill well, like rush the passer, and that's kind of the most important one right now if you're a defender. If you have a specific skill that you do well, the NFL will find ways to get you onto the field, and Mata'afa just continues to excel in it.
All that dude does is win. And again, he sort of, I've said before, he kind of reminded me of Teddy Bruschi when he was at University of Arizona, sort of that undersized nose tackle, but who could rush the passer. And so we maybe project him more as an edge player, possibly an off-the-ball linebacker. Maybe they'll let him keep rushing the passer from the inside. I don't know. Yeah. But Josh, all he does is produce. What did he do against Montana State?
Yeah, he only had 14 pass rush snaps. But in those 14 snaps, 2 sacks, 2 hits, 3 hurries. That's absurd. That's crazy. 50% of the time he was blowing stuff up in the backfield. So I know it's a limited number of snaps, but that's not a limited amount of production. That's an outstanding day of production if you have 80 snaps. So big time from him.
And Josh and I are in no way saying this is an elite height, weight, speed prospect, but if you want a prospect who just produces, it's Hercules Mata'afa.
Yeah.
All right, the next player I want to talk about crazy production so far this year, Josh.
Yeah.
Mazzi Wilkins, the corner from South Florida. This is disgusting video game production he's on right now. It can't continue. It cannot continue, Josh.
It really doesn't make sense for it to, because it's been ridiculous. Week 1, because he was part of that select group of teams that got to play in August. He was targeted 7 times in coverage, gave up 0 receptions, had a pick and a couple of pass breakups. This week, he had another interception, was again tested 7 times, did give up 2 receptions, but neither of them of real consequence. So, I mean, he has as many interceptions so far through 2 games as he has receptions that he's given up, and he's been tested 14 times. It's not like he's only been thrown at twice. So outstanding from him so far. I really like his physicality and his aggressiveness. He's a little light in the pants, needs to bulk up a little bit for the NFL game, that's for sure. But he doesn't play like a guy that knows he's around 180 pounds. So very impressive start for him. And considering the talent he's playing against, which, let's be honest, it's not great at USF, I think he's going to continue to have just a monster year.
All right, the next corner that we want to talk about is Isaiah Oliver from Colorado. Again, a guy we talk about.
I seem to remember talking about him recently.
Who was our wait, Josh? Who was our breakout candidate for corner?
Oh, Isaiah! It's him.
Oh, it is.
Oh, it's him.
Oh, Josh and I are both making our shocked faces. Isaiah Oliver, again, is a guy at Colorado who was sort of stuck behind Thompson, Awuzie, and I'm drawing a blank on the third one now. Who was the other DB there?
Thompson, Awuzie, and Akello Witherspoon.
My bad. Sorry, Akello. Anyways, so, Oliver, but he obviously flashed to us last year as like, man, this guy's probably got more potential than all those guys. But Josh, he's got the height, he's 6 foot, he's a decathlete, that's the type of athlete that this guy is. And he really flashed some of that in this game. Did you get to see much of this performance, Josh? The matchup against him and Gallup?
I did not. Tell me all about it, sir.
So Michael Gallup is one of our, wide receiver prospects. He looked pretty good in that game too. But, the matchup was pretty interesting between those two. Oliver got, 10 targets when they were matched up. It was 10 targets, 4 catches for 52 yards and no touchdowns. But there was like at least one play where it was like a ticky-tack pass interference penalty that they called OPI on that I don't really know if it was offensive pass interference. So those numbers were slightly skewed, but I mean there was a rep, Josh, where they tried to throw like a nice, like long vertical route for, a touchdown in the end zone, and Oliver was just all over, just broke it up like with ease, just, easily just boop, just stopped, knocked it up in the air. And then later on in the game, they tried to throw some back shoulder fades at him, and he knocked away 2 in a row. I mean, he just, incredible the amount of, he had, I think, 4 pass breakups. So just plays on the ball, Josh. I mean, he looked really, really good.
Yeah, that's one of those games that's going to be referred back to when we start getting into January, February in the draft process. They're going to talk about that matchup Gallup had against Isaiah Oliver and how they went back and forth. So fun seeing that even this early in the season. And again, we're going to be revisiting this one. That was a good one.
For sure. All right, the next player I want to talk about sort of lost in the madness of the Gus Johnson, Josh Rosen comeback, and that was
great comeback by Gus Johnson.
Yeah, Caleb
came back from completely butchering one of the best players in the NFL's name. I
know, it was terrible. But anyways, Caleb Wilson, the tight end from UCLA. This was if you are in a Skype chat with Josh and Steve Palazzolo, which you're not, you would have got messages from Steve blowing up your phone saying, "Who is this 81 from UCLA?" Caleb Wilson. He didn't really play that many snaps last year, Josh, so we didn't really get to see too much of him. But man, did he really, really flash in this game?
Yeah, and first off, I want to start by saying this is exciting for Josh Rosen, because one of the worries we had going in was the play of his weapons last year, and was that going to improve? And it looks improved so far when you got a guy like Caleb Wilson doing what he did. Caught 15 of 17 targets. Tight end had 17 targets in a game. That's just absurd. 208 yards. It's 74 yards after the catch. Hey, he was just awesome. Rosen had a 117.6 passer rating when thrown to him. So really excellent performance, and I hope we get to see a lot more of it, because that's good for Rosen to have a go-to guy. And hopefully Wilson is more than that at a college level. We can look beyond that with him.
Yeah, he was really fun to watch. Great hands. And then he was running a lot of these routes from an inline position, with his hand in the dirt. How often do we see that? You know what I mean?
Yep. And that's one of the things we talked about with Rosen, too, in terms of say what you will about the coaching, but it is from an NFL perspective. That they're getting there, and they are getting trained on more of an NFL-style offense. Mm-hmm. So teams are going to love getting to see that with Wilson already, that they're seeing all the inline work that he's doing, both as a receiver and a blocker. Yeah, it was really impressive. And, also I was doing some special teams work on that, too, later, and Wilson was on the kickoff return team. There you go.
Yeah, so a talented player. All right, the next player we want to talk about, Josh, was John Kelly, the halfback from Tennessee. Alvin Kamara is gone now, so it's now John Kelly's time to shine. He had 52 snaps against Georgia Tech. Josh, tell us about it.
77 yards after contact, forced 7 missed tackles as a runner.
Wow.
Also had 5 catches on 6 targets as a receiver. So, I mean, does that sound like Alvin Kamara there or what? I mean, that's what Kamara did last year.
Yeah, I mean, eight forced missed tackles for the game. That's really impressive.
Yep, including the one in the reception. Yep.
All right, and then the last player we want to talk about who sort of warmed up, and we didn't mention when we were talking about the top quarterbacks. It's a guy who's sort of starting to creep up our list here, Josh. It's a guy I know you've seen for a while now at Northwestern. That's Clayton Thorson.
Yeah, he was interesting last year because I didn't really ever focus on him, but I had several Northwestern games. I loved Austin Carr. I was a huge Austin Carr fan, and obviously he ended up making our preseason all preseason team, even though the Patriots cut him and he was picked up by New Orleans. But I never really thought that much of Thorson and what he would be able to develop into, but great start for him, 28 of 38, 340 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 6 of 8, 2 touchdowns on passes that were targeted between the numbers and at least 10 yards downfield. So you see that kind of intermediate and deep passing ability from him. That's the kind of stuff that translates to the next level. That's the kind of stuff we're looking at him going forward. Has a big game this week on the road at Duke. Duke's played some good defense in the last couple of years. I know their record hasn't been great the last couple seasons, especially last year, but they can play some defense, and I think that's a reasonable early season challenge for him.
All right, that wraps up our review of the top performers from last week for the draft prospects. We will try to talk about some matchups that are coming up this week next.
Yeah, Jordan, there's two big games in particular this week, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson, Auburn. There's a number of intriguing matchups in both games, but I'm going to focus on one on each side that I think we should discuss. First off, let's start at the Ohio State-Oklahoma game in Columbus, in the Horseshoe. Last year, obviously, we know what happened. Oklahoma got absolutely pantsed at home by Ohio State. We'll see if that happens again. Obviously, Ohio State, a lot of attrition, but still have their quarterback, still have their running back, and now they have a rookie running back.
I don't want to see anybody get pantsed.
Well, that's why I'm not going to be watching the game either, but we're going to have to talk about it. But let's talk about this matchup, though. There's a number of them to go over on both sides of the ball. I'm interested to see what left tackle for Ohio State, Jamarco Jones, who's kind of a steady riser last year, what he does against Oklahoma's edge rusher, Ogbonnia Okoronkwo. Trying to pronounce his name on the run there. Okoronkwo, really good pass rusher last year. Not a super explosive guy, but he seems to do a little bit of everything. And the interesting thing about his pass rush ability, he got a pressure on every 10.4 pass rushes when he rushed inside.
Yeah, wasn't that something that really stood out to us when we were evaluating him, during the summer, right? Like he gets those inside moves, yeah.
Yeah, and it was to the point where we didn't even know there was a statistic with that, really. We really weren't looking at that. We just noticed that was an issue, or not an issue, but that was definitely a strength of his. Mm-hmm. That's the best ratio among 2018 draft prospects. And while when these two teams faced off last year, while they didn't see a lot of reps against each other because Okoronkwo kind of moved around quite a bit, didn't necessarily rush off that Ohio State left side a lot, of the 4 or 5 reps they did go head-to-head, he beat them twice inside. One with a spin move and one with just a straight inside rip. So that'll be interesting to watch. That was an issue that Jamarco Jones had throughout the season. He was giving up an inside pressure on once every 49 pass blocking reps, and that ranks just 90th in the country among returning tackles. So that's something to watch for. See if Oklahoma figures that out and takes advantage of it.
All right, and then what's the other matchup that you wanted to discuss in the Clemson game?
One of our, I don't know if he's one of our favorites, but one of the more intriguing guys that we looked at this offseason was Clemson's defensive interior prospect, Christian Wilkins. Biggest defensive end or edge prospect I've ever seen. That's where he was playing last year. He's about 320 pounds, about 8'2", just really looked out of place there, and a good athlete for an interior guy, but not so much for an edge guy. Well, they bumped him down inside, and didn't get to see a whole lot of them last week. And when they were playing, I think they were playing Georgia Southern. Or no, I'm sorry, it was Auburn that was playing Georgia Southern. But didn't get a lot of pass rush reps last week, but still, he's at his more natural position inside and played a lot on the left side of that Clemson line. That's going to pit him against Auburn right guard Braden Smith, who was perfect on 29 pass protection reps last week, and 89.6 run blocking grade. That was 6th best nationally among all guards last week. So he's going to have his handfuls with Christian Wilkins, who I think a lot of people really like Wilkins, man. Yep. I keep hearing that he's a day 1, day 2 kind of guy, and we weren't really sure what to do with him, but knew that we'd have this year to kind of figure him out where he plays again, his more natural position. This is a good first step to watch him this weekend against Braden Smith and Auburn.
Yeah, I was going to say this is really good for you and I. Because this is exactly what we were talking about. Like, yep. How do we evaluate a guy that we think is an interior defensive lineman and all his films got him out at edge? So now he's kicking inside and going up against someone like the caliber of Braden Smith. So yeah, great film for us to watch. Excited about that one. Yeah,
22 of his 27 reps last week, Wilkins was on the left side, either at left end or that left nose tackle position. So they're going to be seeing a lot of each other. Should be a fun matchup.
All right, that will do it for this episode of Drafts with Jordan and Josh. Please go ahead and give us a follow on Twitter. I am at PFF_Jordan. Josh is at PFF_Josh. Go to ProFootballFocus.com and check out all the wonderful content there. Subscribe to PFF Edge and or Elite if you have not yet. Go onto iTunes, give us a 5-star review with your Twitter handle or your email address. You'll be eligible to win a subscription to PFF Elite. Josh, anything you want to say on the way out?
Week 1. Can't wait. First game's tonight. I'm excited.
Woohoo! NFL is here.